The obese girl was left behind at the trading post until the mountain man paid her debt. The spring of 1873 came late to the Rockies that year, and with it came the desperate ones, the settlers who'd gambled everything on westward dreams and lost. Fort Coulter's trading post stood like a weathered sentinel at the edge of the known world, where the prairie gave way to pine-covered slopes and where debts were settled in furs, gold dust, or blood. Eliza Hartwell knew she was one of the desperate ones now. She sat on a wooden crate outside the trading post, her worn calico dress straining at the seams, her hands folded in her lap with a dignity she no longer felt. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dirt yard, and she watched as her father's wagon, the wagon that had brought her here, disappeared into a cloud of dust heading east. He hadn't looked back. Not once. "Ma, fat lot of good you are," he had said that morning, his voice loud enough for every trapper and trader within earshot to hear. "Can't work, can't marry, can't even fit through a doorway without turning sideways." He'd thrust a crumpled piece of paper at the trading post owner, a grizzled man named Caleb Monroe. "That's what she owes for the supplies we took on credit last fall. Consider her your problem now." Eliza had stood there, 23 years old, and weighed down by more than just flesh. As her father climbed back into the wagon where her two younger sisters huddled, their eyes averted. Her mother had died of fever 2 winters past, and without her gentle buffer, Eliza's father had grown harder, meaner, until the day he simply decided she was a burden too heavy to carry west. Now the trading post loomed behind her, a rough-hewn structure of pine logs and mortar, smelling of tobacco, gunpowder, and animal pelts. Inside, she could hear men's voices raised in negotiation, the clink of coins, the thud of beaver pelts hitting the counter. This was a man's world, raw and unforgiving, where a woman alone was either a wife, a prostitute, or a problem. Caleb Monroe had made it clear which category she fell into. "You'll work off the debt," he'd told her, his eyes traveling over her substantial frame with undisguised distaste. "Kitchen work, scrubbing, whatever needs doing. Room and board come out of your wages, so figure on being here a good long while. And don't get any ideas about running. There's nowhere to run to, and every man within 100 miles knows your daddy left you here like unwanted baggage." Eliza blinked back tears. She wouldn't cry. Hadn't cried when her mother died, hadn't cried through 3 years of her father's increasingly bitter complaints, and she wouldn't cry now. She'd find a way through this, just as she'd found ways through everything else. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention. A single rider emerged from the tree line to the north, leading a pack mule heavy with bundles of pelts. Even from a distance, Eliza could tell he was different from the usual rough trappers who frequented Fort Coulter. He sat his horse with an easy confidence, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in buckskins dark with age and use. A rifle rested across his saddle, and a long knife hung at his belt. His hair was dark, longer than was fashionable, and a beard covered much of his face. But it was his bearing that set him apart, a self-contained quietness, as if he carried the silence of the mountains with him. The rider dismounted in one fluid motion and tied his horse to the hitching post. His eyes, a startling blue-gray like storm clouds over granite, swept the yard, lingering on Eliza for just a moment before he gathered an armload of pelts and headed into the trading post. Eliza heard Caleb's greeting, suddenly jovial. "Thatcher, about time you came down from that mountain of yours. What have you got for me?" "Beaver, mostly. Some marten and fox." The mountain man's voice was deep, quiet, measured. Eliza rose from her crate and moved to the doorway, peering inside. The trading post's dim interior was crowded with goods: barrels of flour and sugar, coils of rope, cast-iron pots, bolts of cloth, ammunition, whiskey bottles, and countless other items that connected this isolated outpost to civilization. The mountain man, Thatcher, Caleb had called him, was laying out his pelts on the counter with methodical precision. Each pelt was prime quality, carefully treated and preserved. Caleb examined them with a practiced eye, and even he couldn't hide his approval. "Fine work as always, Thatcher. Give you $8 a pelt for the beaver, 4 for the marten, 3 for the fox." Thatcher nodded. "Fair enough. Need some supplies." Beinschwein. For the next 20 minutes, Eliza watched as the mountain man selected goods with the same careful precision he'd shown with his pelts. Flour, coffee, salt, gunpowder, lead, a new whetstone, needles, and thread. No whiskey, she noticed, no tobacco. Just the essentials for survival in the high country. Caleb tallied up the total. "That comes to $42. Your furs brought 73, so you've got 31 in credit." Thatcher nodded again, that economical movement that seemed characteristic of him. He glanced around the trading post as if seeing it for the first time, though Eliza suspected he missed nothing. His gaze found her in the doorway, and she felt herself flush under the directness of his attention. "Who's the woman?" he asked Caleb. Caleb snorted. That's Eliza Hartwell. Her daddy left her here this morning to work off a debt, $43 he owed for supplies on credit. Said she was too fat to be useful and too ugly to marry off." He laughed, a cruel sound. "Can't say I disagree, but at least she can scrub floors." Eliza's face burned with humiliation. She started to turn away, to retreat back outside, but Thatcher's next words stopped her. "What was that debt again?" Caleb blinked. $43. Why?" "I'll take it." The trading post fell silent. 2 other trappers who'd been examining knives turned to stare. Caleb's jaw went slack. "You'll... what?" "The debt. I'll pay it. $43. Thatcher's voice remained level, as if he were discussing the weather. "That, and whatever wages you owe her for today's work. Leaves me with nothing in credit, but we'll call it even." Caleb recovered quickly, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Now hold on, Thatcher. I've got a bargain with her. She works off the debt, and I get kitchen help for the next year or so. She can't work off a debt she doesn't owe." Thatcher's hand rested casually on the counter, but something in his posture had changed, become somehow more present, more solid. "I'm paying it. That makes her a free woman. This ain't right, Thatcher. I need help around here, and her daddy left her for me to—" "Her daddy," Thatcher interrupted, his voice dropping lower, "sold his daughter like she was livestock. That doesn't sit well with me. You want the $43, or should I take my pelts to Fort Bridger?" Fort Bridger was 200 miles south. Caleb's face reddened, but he knew when he was cornered. "Fine," he spat. "Take her, but don't come crying to me when you realize what you've bought yourself." "I haven't bought anything," Thatcher said quietly. "I've paid a debt. That's all." He turned to face Eliza fully for the first time. Up close, he was even larger than she'd thought, easily 6 feet tall, with shoulders that filled the doorway. His face was weathered by sun and wind, marked by old scars that spoke of hard living. But his eyes, those strange gray-blue eyes, regarded her without judgment, without pity, without desire. Just a calm, measuring gaze that somehow made her feel seen rather than examined. "Miss Hartwell," he said, inclining his head slightly. "My name is Daniel Thatcher. I've got a cabin about 30 miles north of here, up in the high country. It's rough living, and the work is hard, but you'd have a roof over your head and food to eat. I could use help with cooking, mending, tanning hides, tasks I'm not so good at on my own. If you're willing to come work for me, I'll pay you fair wages and see you safe. Come spring, if you want to leave, I'll bring you back here or wherever else you want to go with enough money to start fresh." Eliza stared at him, unable to speak. It was too much, too sudden. This stranger had just paid her father's debt, her debt now, she supposed, though she'd never asked for those supplies, and was offering her employment, freedom, respect, things she'd stopped expecting from anyone. "Why?" she finally managed to whisper. "Why would you do this?" Something flickered in Thatcher's eyes, memory perhaps, or old pain. "Let's just say I know what it's like to be left behind," he said softly, "and nobody deserves that." He waited, patient as stone, while she struggled to find words. Behind him, Caleb muttered curses under his breath, and the other trappers watched with undisguised curiosity. The whole fort would know about this by nightfall, the fat girl whose daddy abandoned her, and the strange mountain man who'd paid her debt. But as Eliza looked into Daniel Thatcher's weathered face, she realized she didn't care what anyone else thought. For the first time in years, someone was offering her a choice. Not demanding, not assuming, not commanding, offering. She stood straighter, lifting her chin. "Yes," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Yes, Mr. Thatcher, I'll come with you." He nodded, the barest hint of approval in his expression. "Call me Daniel. We should leave within the hour. I want to make good distance before dark. Do you have belongings?" "Just a satchel. It's outside." "Get it then. I'll finish up here and meet you at the horses." Eliza retrieved her pitiful satchel, a spare dress, her mother's Bible, a few personal items, and stood by the horses, trying not to think about what she was doing. Riding off into the wilderness with a man she'd just met, heading to a remote cabin 30 miles from the nearest settlement with no guarantee of anything except hard work and uncertainty. But what was the alternative? Working off an impossible debt at the trading post, sleeping in a drafty storage room, subjected to Caleb's contempt and the casual cruelty of passing trappers. At least this way, she had a chance, maybe her only chance. Daniel emerged from the trading post carrying his supplies, his face dark with suppressed anger. He loaded the goods onto his pack mule with efficient movements, then turned to Eliza. "Can you ride?" "I used to when I was younger." "Good enough." He gestured to his horse, a sturdy bay mare. "She's steady and patient. Her name's Sadie. I'll walk alongside until we're out of sight of the fort, then we'll trade off. You walk for a while, I'll ride. That way neither of us wears out." It was a kindness, and they both knew it. Eliza was heavy enough that riding for 30 miles would exhaust any horse. But Daniel's matter-of-fact tone, his practical solution, somehow stripped away the humiliation that might have come with acknowledgement of her size. He helped her mount. His hands were strong but gentle, and then took Sadie's reins and began walking north, leading both the horse and the pack mule. Eliza twisted in the saddle to look back at Fort Coulter one last time. The trading post squatted in the afternoon sun, surrounded by stumps and mud, a tiny outpost of so-called civilization at the edge of the vast wilderness. She wondered if she'd ever see it again, wondered if she cared. "Don't look back," Daniel said quietly, not turning around. "Only forward now." So Eliza faced forward, into the unknown mountains, following a stranger who'd bought her freedom for $43 and asked nothing in return. The afternoon sun warmed her face, and somewhere in the distance, an eagle cried out, soaring invisible against the blue infinity of sky. They traveled through the afternoon in near silence. Daniel was not a talker, Eliza quickly learned, but his silence was comfortable, contemplative rather than cold. He pointed out landmarks, a lightning-struck pine that marked a good spring, a rocky outcrop where he'd once seen a grizzly with cubs, the distant peaks that sheltered his valley. After an hour, he called a halt. "Your turn to walk for a spell. Sadie needs the break." They traded positions, and Eliza discovered that walking was harder than riding. Her dress caught on brush, her shoes, worn thin from the journey west, pinched and rubbed, but she set her jaw and kept pace, refusing to complain. Daniel had paid her debt. The least she could do was pull her weight. He noticed, of course. Those sharp eyes missed nothing. "We'll stop soon. Let you rest. There's a stream about a mile ahead. Good place to water the animals and eat something." True to his word, he led them to a clear stream that tumbled down from the heights, its water so cold it made Eliza's teeth ache when she drank. Daniel unpacked dried meat and hardtack from his supplies, handing her a generous portion. It's not fancy," he apologized, "but it'll keep your strength up. Once we get to the cabin, there's cornmeal, beans, salt pork. Whatever you can make of it will be better than what I usually manage." Eliza bit into the jerky. Tough, smoky, surprisingly flavorful. This is good. Did you smoke it yourself? I did. Deer from last fall. He settled onto a rock, his long legs stretched out, and for the first time she saw him relax slightly, as if the distance from the trading post had eased something in him. The high country's full of deer, elk too, and occasionally buffalo in the valleys. We won't starve. Why do you live up there? Eliza asked, then immediately regretted the question. It was too personal, too forward. But Daniel didn't seem to mind. He gazed up at the mountains, their peaks still snow-covered despite the spring season. It's quiet. I can think. I can breathe. Down in the settlements, there's too much noise, too many people crowding in with their opinions and expectations. Up here, a man can be himself. Or a woman, Eliza said softly. He looked at her then, really looked, and something like understanding passed between them. Or a woman, he agreed. They reached the cabin as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson that seemed impossible, too beautiful to be real. The cabin sat in a small valley surrounded by towering pines, with a creek running nearby, and a meadow that would be lush with grass come summer. It was larger than Eliza had expected. 2 rooms, she guessed, with a covered porch and a small barn for the animals. It's beautiful, she breathed. It serves. But Daniel's voice held satisfaction. This was his place, his refuge, and he was proud of it. Come on, let's get you settled before dark. The inside of the cabin was surprisingly tidy. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with cooking implements hung neatly beside it. A rough table and chairs occupied the center of the main room, and shelves held supplies, canned goods, sacks of flour and beans, boxes of ammunition. Furs of various animals draped over a bench, waiting to be treated. A door in the back wall presumably led to the bedroom. Daniel set down his supplies and turned to her. You'll take the bedroom. I'll sleep out here by the fire. I couldn't. This is your home. You should have your bed. Eliza. He cut her off gently but firmly. I spent 10 years sleeping on the ground under the stars. A bedroll by the fire is luxury. You need the privacy and the comfort. It's not up for discussion. She nodded, too tired to argue. Daniel showed her the bedroom, simple but clean, with a bed covered in what appeared to be a bearskin, a small table, and a trunk. There's women's clothes in the trunk, he said, his voice carefully neutral. They might fit you. You're welcome to them. He left before she could ask whose clothes they were. Eliza opened the trunk with trembling hands and found dresses, undergarments, a woolen shawl, all carefully folded and smelling faintly of cedar. They were quality garments, lovingly preserved. Someone important had worn these, someone Daniel had cared about. She didn't try them on that night. It felt too intimate, too presumptuous. Instead, she collapsed onto the bed fully clothed and fell into an exhausted sleep, her last conscious thought a confused tangle of gratitude, fear, and something that might have been hope. Eliza woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. She stumbled out of the bedroom to find Daniel at the fireplace, managing a cast-iron skillet with the ease of long practice. Morning, he said without turning around. Coffee's ready. Eggs will be done in a minute. She poured herself coffee from the pot hanging over the fire, wrapping her hands around the tin cup for warmth. The cabin was cool this early, though the fire helped. You didn't have to cook. Habit. He slid eggs onto 2 tin plates, added bacon and a piece of fried bread. Besides, wanted to talk to you about the work, and that goes better over food. They sat at the table, and Eliza discovered she was ravenous. The eggs were perfectly cooked, the bacon crisp, the bread golden. This is delicious, she said. Wait till you taste your own cooking. I'm passable, but I've eaten my own meals for so long I've stopped tasting them. He took a sip of coffee, then met her eyes. Here's how I see things. I'll do the trapping, hunting, and outdoor work. You handle the cooking, mending, cabin maintenance, and help me with treating hides. It goes faster with 2 people. I'll teach you what you need to know." "That seems more than fair." $1 a day for your wages. That's $30 a month, paid the first of each month. Room and board's free. You eat what I eat, sleep under a sound roof. Clothing you need, I'll provide or pay for. Any questions?" Eliza's hands trembled slightly. $1 a day was generous, more than many men made. In 6 months, she'd have enough money to start over anywhere she chose. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Daniel set down his cup, his scarred hands flat on the table. "I told you I knew what it was like to be left behind. That was the truth, but not all of it." He paused, choosing words carefully. 10 years ago, I had a wife. Her name was Sarah. She was Shoshone, from a tribe up north. We met at a rendezvous, and somehow she saw something in me worth loving. We married according to her people's way and mine, and we built this cabin together." Eliza's heart clenched. She knew where the story was going. "We had 5 good years, 5 years of laughter and hard work and plans for the future. Then a fever came through, killed half her tribe, including Sarah. I was away on a long trapping circuit. By the time I got back, she'd been dead for 2 weeks. His voice remained steady, but Eliza could hear the old grief beneath it, still sharp after all this time. "Her things are in that trunk. I kept thinking I don't know. Maybe someone could use them someday. Someone who needed kindness as much as she always gave it." "I'm so sorry," Eliza whispered. "Me too." He looked up at her, and his eyes were clear, honest. "I'm not looking for a wife, Eliza. I'm not looking for anything except maybe a little company and someone to share the work. But I figured Sarah would have wanted her things to be useful rather than locked away. And she would have liked you. She had a soft heart for people the world treated poorly." Eliza had to blink back tears. "I'll take good care of them, and I'll earn my keep, Daniel, I promise." "I don't doubt it." He stood, clearing the plates. "Now let me show you around. Lot to learn if you're going to survive up here." The next weeks passed in a blur of activity. Daniel was a patient teacher, showing Eliza how to manage the fire for different types of cooking, how to recognize edible plants in the forest, how to treat animal hides by scraping away tissue and soaking them in solutions of brain and fat. The work was hard, harder than anything she'd done before. Her hands blistered, then calloused. Her back ached from bending over hides and scrubbing floors. But she was eating regularly, sleeping in a comfortable bed, and most importantly, being treated like a human being rather than an inconvenient burden. Sarah's clothes did fit her, with some letting out of seams. Eliza discovered Sarah had been a tall woman, strong-built, and her dresses accommodated Eliza's frame better than anything she'd worn in years. Wearing them felt like a benediction, as if this woman she'd never met was reaching across death to offer comfort. Daniel kept his word about everything. He paid her on the 1st of June, exactly $30 in gold and silver coins, counted out solemnly. "You've earned every penny," he said. "Cooking's improved around here considerably." It was true. Eliza had discovered she had a talent for making do with simple ingredients. She baked bread that rose high and golden, made stews that filled the cabin with savory smells, even managed a respectable dried apple pie from their stores. Daniel ate with genuine appreciation, often going back for seconds. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm. Daniel would rise before dawn to check his trap lines, returning around midday with whatever he'd caught. Eliza would have a hot meal waiting. Afternoons were spent working together on hides, or doing cabin maintenance, or tending the small garden they'd planted. Evenings, they'd sit by the fire, Daniel mending equipment or working leather, Eliza sewing or reading aloud from her mother's Bible. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them was comfortable, companionable. Eliza found herself healing in ways she hadn't expected. The mountain air filled her lungs, clearing away years of shame and self-hatred. The work kept her body strong, her mind occupied. And Daniel's steady, uncomplicated kindness showed her that not all men were like her father. Some could be trusted, relied upon, respected. She was happy. The realization came to her one evening in late June as she watched the sunset paint the valley in shades of purple and gold. She was actually genuinely happy for the first time in years, maybe the first time ever. "Penny for your thoughts," Daniel said from his seat on the porch where he was oiling a trap. "I was just thinking how beautiful it is here." "It is that." He looked out over the valley, his expression peaceful. "Every day I wake up grateful I found this place, found a way to live that makes sense to me." "Thank you," Eliza said suddenly, "for everything. For paying my debt, for bringing me here, for treating me like I matter. You saved my life, Daniel." He looked uncomfortable, as he always did, with direct gratitude. "You saved your own life by being willing to work hard and learn. I just gave you a chance. What you did with it, that's all you." But Eliza knew better. Yes, she'd worked hard. But without Daniel's intervention that day at the trading post, she'd be trapped in a cycle of debt and degradation with no hope of escape. He'd seen her humanity when everyone else saw only her size, her inconvenience, her supposed worthlessness. "Still," she insisted. "Thank you." He nodded, accepting it this time. "You're welcome. Now come look at this trap. Think the spring's weakening. See if you agree." Life continued its peaceful pattern through July and into August. The garden flourished, providing fresh vegetables to supplement their diet of meat and staples. Eliza learned to shoot Daniel's rifle, becoming proficient enough to bring down a deer on her own, an achievement that filled her with pride. Daniel taught her to track animals, to read weather signs, to understand the rhythms of the mountain. Her body changed too. The steady work and regular meals, not too much, not too little, just what she needed, reshaped her. She was still a large woman, would always be tall and strong-built, but the unhealthy weight that had come from stress and irregular eating fell away. She felt powerful now, capable, alive. Daniel noticed. "You're getting strong," he commented one day as she easily hefted a bag of flour that would have strained her months ago. "Mountain living agrees with you." "It does," she agreed, smiling. "I never knew work could feel good. Back home, everything I did felt like I was trying to make up for the space I took up. Here, work is just work. It has purpose. It matters." "Everything you do matters, Eliza. Don't ever doubt that." The words were simple, but they lodged deep in her heart, a gift more precious than the wages he paid her. The trouble came in late August, carried on horses and ill intentions. Eliza was in the garden picking beans when she heard riders approaching. Daniel was checking trap lines up in the high country and wouldn't be back until evening. She straightened, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, and felt her stomach clench with instinctive fear. 3 men rode into the clearing, rough-looking trappers, their clothes filthy, their eyes hard. She recognized one of them from Fort Coulter, a man named Pike, who'd always looked at her with contempt, mixed with something uglier. "Well, well," Pike said, dismounting. "If it ain't the fat girl Thatcher bought himself. Living up here all alone with him, are you? Bet you're earning your keep in more ways than one." Eliza's face burned, but she kept her voice steady. "Mr. Thatcher isn't here. You should come back another time." "Oh, we know he ain't here. That's why we came now." Pike moved closer, and the other 2 men fanned out, cutting off escape routes. "See, word around Fort Coulter is that Thatcher's got a nice stash of furs and gold up here. Been trapping for years, never spending much. We figured we'd come see for ourselves." "There's nothing here for you. Please leave." "Not till we've searched the place." Pike gestured to his companions. "Boys, check the cabin and the barn." Eliza moved to block their path. "You can't—" Pike backhanded her casually, sending her sprawling into the dirt. "Stay down, girl. This ain't your fight." Stars burst behind her eyes. Her cheek throbbed where he'd struck her, and she tasted blood. But as the men moved past her toward the cabin, something inside her snapped. This was her home. hers and Daniel's. These men had no right. She scrambled to her feet and ran for the cabin, reaching it just as Pike was kicking in the door. "Stop! Please!" He shoved her aside again, harder this time, and she fell against the porch railing. Inside, she could hear the other men ransacking the cabin, overturning furniture, emptying shelves. The violation of it made her sick with rage. Then she remembered. Daniel's rifle. He'd left it hanging over the fireplace, loaded as always in case of animal threats, if she could just reach it. Eliza slipped inside while Pike was distracted barking orders. The cabin was chaos, supplies scattered, furs thrown from their neat stacks, her sewing torn and trampled. She grabbed the rifle from its hooks, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. "Hey!" One of the men saw her. "She's got a gun!" Pike spun around, his expression darkening. "Put that down before you hurt yourself, girl." Eliza raised the rifle, pressing the stock to her shoulder the way Daniel had taught her. The weapon was heavy, but her arms were strong now, steady from months of hard work. "Get out, all of you." "Now?" Pike laughed. "You ain't gonna shoot nobody. Women don't have the stones for it." "I've killed deer and elk with this rifle," Eliza said, her voice cold and clear. "I can sure as hell shoot a man, especially one breaking into my home." Something in her tone made Pike hesitate. Maybe he saw in her eyes that she meant it. Maybe he recognized that the scared, humiliated girl from the trading post was gone, replaced by a woman who'd found her strength. "Let's go," he said finally. "Place ain't worth the trouble." "Smart man," said a voice from the doorway. Everyone froze. Daniel stood in the entrance, his own rifle pointed steadily at Pike's chest. He must have heard the commotion and come back at a run. His breath was ragged, his eyes blazing with cold fury. "You've got 3 seconds to be on those horses," Daniel said, his voice deadly quiet. 1. The men scrambled for the door. 2. They mounted in a panic, nearly trampling each other. "If I ever see any of you near my property again, I won't bother counting. Understand?" Pike nodded frantically, and the 3 men spurred their horses into a gallop, disappearing into the trees. Daniel lowered his rifle and rushed to Eliza. "Are you hurt?" "I saw him hit you." "I'm fine." But now that the danger had passed, she was shaking uncontrollably. "They were going to rob you. I couldn't let them." "Shh, it's all right. They're gone." He gently took the rifle from her trembling hands and set it aside, then examined her face where Pike had struck her. His touch was careful, but his jaw was clenched with anger. "He marked you." "It's just a bruise." "It's assault." Daniel looked at the ruined cabin, then back at her. "You stood up to 3 armed men. Do you know how brave that was?" "I was terrified," Eliza admitted. "Brave doesn't mean unafraid. It means doing what's right despite the fear." He pulled out a chair that hadn't been overturned and guided her into it. "Sit. Let me get you water. Then we'll clean up this mess together." They spent the rest of the evening restoring order to the cabin. Daniel moved with barely suppressed rage, muttering about going to Fort Coulter to deal with Pike, but Eliza talked him out of it. "He's not worth it," she said, "and I don't want you getting into trouble on my account." "Eliza, you could have been seriously hurt, or worse." "But I wasn't, because you taught me to shoot and to stand my ground. I'm fine, Daniel, really." That night, Daniel insisted on sleeping on the porch with his rifle, keeping watch. Eliza lay in bed, listening to the night sounds of the forest, her cheek throbbing but her heart strangely light. She'd faced down danger and survived. She'd protected what mattered to her. She'd been brave. The next morning, Daniel was different, more protective, more watchful. He taught her to load and fire his pistol, insisted she keep it with her whenever he left the valley. He fortified the cabin door and added a better lock to the barn. "You're not a prisoner here," he told her, "but I need to know you're safe when I'm gone." "I understand. And Daniel, thank you for coming back when you did." "I'll always come back," he said, and something in his tone made her look up sharply. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw something new, or maybe something that had been growing slowly all summer without either of them noticing. Respect. Trust. And beneath it, something deeper, more complicated, something that made her breath catch. "We should check the north trap line," he said abruptly, looking away. "See if yesterday's excitement spooked any game." But as they walked into the forest together, Eliza felt the shift between them, subtle as a change in the wind. They'd been employer and employee, then friends, then something like family. Now they were becoming something else entirely. And for the first time in her life, Eliza wasn't afraid of what came next. September arrived with cold mornings and the first hints of gold in the aspen leaves. Daniel had been ranging farther afield on his trap lines, staying gone for days at a time, returning with prime pelts that would fetch high prices at Fort Coulter. But something had changed between them since the incident with Pike. Daniel was more careful around her, more formal, as if rebuilding boundaries that had somehow eroded over the summer. Eliza missed their easy companionship, but she understood. Whatever was growing between them was dangerous territory, for both of them. One evening in mid-September, Daniel returned from a 3-day absence looking troubled. Over dinner, venison stew and fresh bread, he cleared his throat. "I'll be taking furs to Fort Coulter next week. Thought maybe you'd want to come along. You could collect your wages so far, should be near $200. That's enough to buy passage on a wagon train heading east if you wanted. Or stake a claim somewhere civilized, start over." Eliza's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. Are you asking me to leave?" "No." He looked stricken. "God, no. I'm just saying, our original agreement was through the spring, and here it is, nearly fall. I don't want you to feel trapped here. If you want to go, I'll help you do it. If you want to stay—" He trailed off, his eyes searching hers. "If I want to stay?" she prompted softly. Daniel set down his spoon, his hands clenching into fists on the table. "Eliza, I need to be honest with you. These past months having you here, it's changed things for me. Changed me. When I lost Sarah, I thought I was done with caring about anyone. Easier that way, safer. But you—" He shook his head, frustrated with his own inability to find words. "You've become important to me. More than just a hired hand, more than a friend, and I don't know what to do about it." Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. "What are you saying, Daniel?" "I'm saying I've fallen in love with you." The words came out rough, almost angry, as if he were fighting them. "I know that's not fair. I hired you when you had nowhere else to go. The power balance is all wrong. You might feel obligated to return feelings you don't actually have. So that's why I'm giving you the out. Take your money, go make a new life somewhere else, and forget about the mountain man who couldn't keep his feelings professional." Eliza stood up slowly, her legs shaking. She walked around the table to stand in front of him, her hands reaching for his face, making him look at her. "Daniel Thatcher, you're the most honorable, frustrating man I've ever met. Don't you think I get a say in this?" His eyes were stormy with hope and fear. "What's your say then?" "My say is that I've been in love with you since July, maybe longer. My say is that this is the first place I've ever felt at home, and you're the first person who's ever made me feel valued for who I am, not what I look like or what I can do for them. My say is that I don't want to leave. I want to stay here with you for as long as you'll have me." "Eliza, let me finish." Her voice was steady now, sure. "I know I'm not pretty. I know I'm not the kind of woman men dream about. But I'm strong, and I'm capable, and I love you with everything I am. If that's enough, if I'm enough, then I'm choosing you. I'm choosing this life. I'm choosing us." For a long moment, Daniel just stared at her. Then he surged to his feet, gathering her into his arms with a fierceness that stole her breath. "You're more than enough," he said hoarsely against her hair. "You're everything. God, Eliza, I was so afraid you'd leave." "I'm not leaving," she said, wrapping her arms around him, feeling his heart pound against hers. "I'm home." He pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hands cradling it gently, mindful of the bruise Pike had left, now faded to yellow but still visible. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to marry you proper. We can go to Fort Coulter, find a preacher—" "Yes," Eliza interrupted, laughing through sudden tears. "Yes, Daniel, I'll marry you." He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the chaste kisses her father had once insisted she practice with acceptable suitors back home. This was fire and promise. Two lonely people finding each other against impossible odds, claiming their right to happiness in a harsh world. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "I loved Sarah," he said quietly. "I need you to know that. What she and I had was real. I know. But what I feel for you, it's different. Not better or worse, just different. Its own thing. Is that all right?" Eliza thought of her mother, of the lessons in grace and resilience she'd learned before fever took her away. "My mother used to say that the heart isn't a pie, where if you give someone a piece, there's less for others. The heart is more like a candle. You can light as many others from it as you want, and it never diminishes the original flame. You loved Sarah. You love me. Both things are true, and both are sacred. Your mother was wise. She was. I wish you could have met her. I wish I could have too. And I wish Sarah could have met you. She would have loved you, I'm sure of it." They stood there in the lamplight, holding each other, making quiet plans for a future neither had dared hope for. Outside, the mountain night wrapped around the cabin like a blessing, and somewhere in the darkness an owl called, a sound of wilderness, of survival, of life continuing despite all obstacles.